When we think about Asheville, North Carolina, we probably imagine Biltmore Estate, but there is another, lesser known castle perched on a nearby hill. Hi everyone, Ken here. Hit that subscribe button and let's explore this house. In 1871, Fred Seeley was born into a modest family of veterans in Monmouth, New Jersey. Fred had only a public school education and started working at a young age. At 18, he landed a job with Park Davis Pharmaceutical Company in Detroit. The young Seeley invented machines for pressing pills and for counting and packaging them, innovations that streamlined medicine production. All the while, he was living in a boarding house, his impoverished roommate being none other than Henry Ford. A major turning point came in 1897 when Seeley impressed Edwin Wiley Grove, a prominent patent medicine manufacturer. Grove, famous for his tasteless Chiltonic malaria remedy, recruited Seeley to join his Paris Medicine Company as a top executive. The partnership benefited both men. Around the same time, Seeley cemented his bond with the Grove family by marrying Grove's daughter, Evelyn Grove, in 1898. The marriage made Fred Seeley not only Grove's right-hand man in business, but also his son-in-law, a connection that would profoundly shape Asheville's history. By his late 20s, Seeley had already accumulated considerable wealth and experience through the pharmaceutical business. But in 1905, seeking new challenges, he ventured into the world of journalism. With Grove's financial backing, Seeley purchased and merged two struggling Atlanta newspapers, launching the Atlanta Georgian. He used this paper as a platform to campaign for causes he believed in, notably attacking the abusive convict leasing system in Georgia, where prisoners were rented out as virtually slave labor. Seeley's bold editorials against the chain gang labor system stirred public outrage and helped bring an end to the practice. However, his crusading stance also angered powerful businessmen who benefited from cheap or free labor. In retaliation, many of Georgia's biggest advertisers pulled their support, and Seeley even received personal threats. Facing mounting pressure, Seeley sold the newspaper to media mogul William Randolph Hearst in 1912. Having made a name and fortune for himself in both pharmaceuticals and publishing by his early 40s, Fred turned his attention to Asheville, North Carolina. His father-in-law, E.W. Grove, had recently begun large-scale development in Asheville. In 1912, Grove summoned Seeley to Asheville to help transform the city into a resort and residential enclave for the wealthy. Seeley did not disappoint. He took charge of designing and building Grove's dream hotel, the Grove Park Inn. In an era of grand projects, the Grove Park Inn was a marvel of rapid construction and rustic grandeur. Under Seeley's supervision and design input, hundreds of workers labored around the clock to construct the massive stone hotel in a mere 11 months. When the inn opened in July 1913, it was acclaimed as one of the finest resorts in the world. As a reward for this achievement, Grove gave Seeley a prime piece of real estate, a large tract of land on Sunset Mountain, just east of the inn, with panoramic views overlooking Asheville. Little did anyone realize that Seeley would soon use that mountaintop parcel to build a castle of his very own. In 1914, only months after completing the inn, Fred broke ground on what he initially dubbed Overlook, a grand stone residence that would take shape on the site of a former hilltop park and casino. Seeley was an Anglophile, enamored with European history and architecture. For inspiration, he looked to the medieval-style manors and abbeys of England. In fact, Overlook Castle's design was reportedly loosely inspired by Ford Abbey, a centuries-old monastery turned estate in Dorset, England. Seeley adapted old-world influences to his mountaintop setting, envisioning a stately, Gothic Revival mansion built of the same rugged granite boulders that had given the Grove Park Inn its distinctive look. The result was nothing short of astonishing. Rising 3 stories and spanning 20,000 square feet, Overlook was a true castle in both form and atmosphere. The exterior stonework is particularly noteworthy. Seeley used locally quarried granite, but unlike the roughly piled boulders of the Grove Park Inn, the castle's stones were carefully cut and arranged. The masonry intermixes elongated, square-cut blocks with occasional standing stones, giving the walls a unique texture and hinting at ancient construction techniques. Construction stretched on for years as Seeley continuously refined and expanded the plans. Although the family moved into the home around 1916, Overlook was not fully completed until about 1924. When finished, it was arguably the most extravagant private residence in the region, second only to George Vanderbilt's famous Biltmore Estate. At the heart of the castle was an enormous great room, sometimes called the living hall, with a 32-foot high ceiling and massive oak beams hewn from whole trees. This room, measuring roughly 30 by 57 feet, was Sealy's version of a medieval banquet hall, a space for grand entertaining. Its walls were adorned with high wood paneling and stone above, creating a warm yet castle-like ambiance. Overlook's great hall and other rooms featured immense stone fireplaces, such as that in the castle's library, which boasted an elaborate Tudor-style mantel, which according to local lore came from an English manor formerly owned by Queen Victoria. Many of the windows throughout the castle were fitted with stained glass, casting colorful light into the interior. The ceilings in some formal rooms were crafted in the Jacobean style, intricately molded plasterwork and geometric patterns reminiscent of grand English country houses. Despite its feudal appearance, Overlook Castle incorporated cutting-edge 20th century technology. Thomas Edison, a personal friend of Sealy's, designed the early electrical systems for the home. Remarkably, the castle even featured an early version of smart lighting, closet doors wired with switches that automatically turned lights on when opened. Overlook Castle was truly built to impress, and impress it did. High society flocked to Fred Sealy's castle in the 1920s. At various times, 5 different US presidents visited the castle. Woodrow Wilson, Warren G. Harding, Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, and Franklin D. Roosevelt all reportedly spent time at Overlook during or after their presidencies. We can imagine the scene in the Roaring Twenties, limousines winding up Sunset Mountain to arrive at a medieval-inspired castle, where captains of industry and heads of state mingled in the Great Hall. From the vantage point of the 1920s, Fred L. Sealy appeared to be living a charmed life, a self-made magnate residing in a castle he built at the peak of high society. Yet behind the scenes, Sealy's relationship with his mentor and father-in-law E.W. Grove had soured. The two men, once partners in business, became embroiled in a bitter feud over the very hotel that had launched Asheville's Renaissance. Sealy had managed the Grove Park Inn successfully for 14 years, effectively running it as his own, and he dearly wanted to own the hotel outright. Grove, however, stubbornly refused to sell the inn to his son-in-law. This strained their personal relationship and even put stress on Fred's marriage to Grove's daughter. By the time Grove died in 1927, the dispute had escalated to legal action. Sealy filed a lawsuit against Grove and later his estate for breach of promise, claiming that Grove had reneged on agreements related to the business. In 1928, a court in St. Louis, Missouri, where Grove's company was based, finally ruled against Sealy, bolstered by a final version of Grove's will that showed no special provisions for Sealy. Without the security he thought he had, Fred changed course completely. In the late 1920s, he successfully lured a European manufacturing enterprise to the area. Thanks to Sealy's connections, the Dutch company ENKA built a sprawling rayon factory outside Asheville that brought thousands of jobs to the region. By the early 1940s, however, he was back on track, overseeing operations of Battery Park Hotel, by then owned by his wife Evelyn. But that all came full circle in his twilight as he passed away in 1942 at the age of 70. Now widowed, Evelyn moved out of the lonely castle and took up residence in a suite at the Battery Park Hotel downtown. For a few years, Overlook Castle sat mostly empty, its great halls quiet after decades of social gatherings. Then, in the winter of 1949, she offered Overlook at a generous price to the Asheville Biltmore College, a forerunner of today's University of North Carolina at Asheville. For the next dozen years, Fred Sealy's former home was known as Sealy Castle or Sealy Hall, and served as the central building of the college's campus. But by 1961, the school had outgrown the castle's capacity and relocated to a new campus in Nashville, leaving Overlook Castle vacant once again. After the college's departure, Overlook's fate hung in the balance. A private development company bought the property, intending to find a new use, but they allowed it to sit largely idle for several years. It changed hands a few more times, cycling between private residences and more institutional uses. But as of today, Overlook Castle has returned to its original status, serving as a private residence. And with that, I'll turn it over to you. What did you think about Overlook Castle? Let me know down below in the comments section. My goal for this year is to reach 1 million subscribers. If you are among the 1 to 2 million monthly viewers of this channel who are not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and let's reach this goal together. As always, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time on This House.